He's such an eloquent preacher of divine mercy. We don't call him Holy Father for nothing. He's the father of our family. And there's a death in the family. And we're saddened.
That, the voice of Timothy Cardinal Dolan in New York, who some in the United States are suggesting may be selected by the College of Cardinals as the next Pope of the world, leader of the Catholic Church. But he's an American, and that apparently works against him. A very good Easter Monday to you, and welcome back. As you are doubtless aware, after greeting the faithful in St. Peter's Square yesterday on Easter Sunday, coming to the balcony at the Vatican and getting in the Pope-mobile and taking a lap around St. Peter's Square in front of St. Peter's Basilica. The Pope has died at the age of 88. You're doubtless aware by now. And so the process, the historic process begins as Pope Francis leaves this earth and after a lifetime of service to the church goes on to his reward, and the process of selecting a new pope at the Vatican, and the College of Cardinals will gather in Rome at the Vatican, and the process, and we'll all be watching, the white smoke and the black smoke, and that is coming. I suspect this is going to take a couple of weeks for all this to go as it will go. The Pope Francis, the now deceased Pope, there will be a period of mourning, and he will lie in repose in St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican, and he will be laid to rest, presumably beneath the Vatican as a pope, now late pope. And then the process begins for replacing the Pope, with the cardinals coming from all over the world and gathering in Rome to select. And it's interesting, they have, apparently if you're over 80, a cardinal over the age of 80, you're not invited to vote. That means Joe Biden couldn't vote, right? But if you're a member of the College of Cardinals, you're a cardinal from anywhere on the planet Earth, you will convene in Rome. Presumably, you're invited to, you're welcome to, you're expected to convene for the conclave. There was a Hollywood movie about this process made quite recently. I didn't actually watch it. I haven't seen it. Have you seen that? I meant to ask my best girl if we have that movie laying around anywhere, but we might, and then again we might not. But a fascinating historic process, and it is always an amazing thing to watch. If you've been around for a while, you've seen it more than a time or two in your lifetime, and a fascinating process to be sure. We've got a lot to say about that, and we have a lot to say about the other things going on in the world too. For example, a gang of Democrat miscreants who care not about the Pope's passing or selecting a new Pope because they're godless communists. You know how they are. They're lefties. And we had Chris Van Hollen, the Democrat senator from the state of Maryland, go and visit the MS-13 gang member in El Salvador, not in prison. He didn't get into the prison. They met at a nice-looking place where he looked happy and healthy and wise and had a funny baseball hat on for the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl and remarkable stuff. And Chris Van Hollen, he was making the rounds yesterday because the Democrat Party's making him out to be a hero, because he supports foreign criminal gangs. And when you're a Democrat, that puts you in good with the party, puts you in solid. They're high-fiving each other and trading tattoo stories. The tattoo stories on this guy, kind of interesting. Garcia, they bring me the head of Alfredo Garcia. And the Democrats are not done yet, because we just learned this morning that another group of Democrat representatives from the House of Representatives have arrived in El Salvador to go camping with their friend, their hero, the gang member Garcia, because they're on the side of madness. They're on the side of illness. They're on the side of crime. They're the Democrat Party. And I've got to say, fascinating times to be alive. But another group of Democrats, Maxwell Frost from Florida, Democrat from Florida. He's one of the heroes of the Democrat Party, which means he's not on our side at all. But it is and his name is Maxwell Frost. There was a band way back when, I guess in the 1970s, called Max Frost and the Troopers, kind of a fake band. But Max Frost and the Troopers created for a movie and then had to become a real band because their hit song was so popular that they had to make the band and go on tour. Did a song called Nothing Can Change the Shape of Things to Come. You know, nothing can change the shape of things to come. It writes itself, doesn't it? And Max Frost and the Troopers did the song. Maxwell Frost, left-wing radical extremist, pro-terrorist, Democrat, typical Democrat in that regard. And then, so that's Maxwell Frost. And Maxine Dexter also headed down there because it's Max and Max here. Plus Robert Garcia, a left-wing radical extremist, and Yasmin Ansari. Is she a jihadi? I don't know what she is, Yasmin Ansari. They're now in El Salvador to push for the return of Kilmore Garcia. They love people named Kilmore because they're the left and nobody kills more than the left. Isn't that amazing? They say that he was unlawfully, that's what they say, deported by the Trump administration. He unlawfully entered the country, I'll tell you that much, and he belonged to an unlawful organization called MS-13, which is a killer gang of the First Order. And the Democrats, they want nothing more than to get this guy back in their neighborhood wandering around dating their daughter because they're insane. That's one of the problems with them. I wonder if maybe we can convince President Bukele in El Salvador to keep these three members of Congress, Max Frost and Maxine Dexter and Robert Garcia, and Yasmin Ansari. Maybe they'd like to find out what it's really like in that prison day in, day out. It might be good for them. They could learn. House Democrats, National Panhandler Radio, very excited. House Democrats land in El Salvador, demand Abrego Garcia's return. They're always demanding, aren't they? These arrogant, imperialist, white supremacist Democrats. I know they're not even all white, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to call them white supremacists anyway. Aren't they amazing? Yeah, House Democrats, NPR, very excited. House Democrats landed El Salvador. Demand, a list of demands. Did they bring guns? Because it can be kind of rough country, you know. And amazing stuff. Also, National Panhandler Radio. Trump faces bipartisan criticism over Abrego Garcia deportation. All you need is like one Republican who's a city council member in Peoria. And they say, oh, look, there's bipartisan criticism because the Democrat media is the most corrupt institution in America. We know that. And the media love him. What we know about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Man mistakenly deported. He wasn't mistakenly deported. All you have to do is listen to what they say. I've played for you what they say. But the media, they don't follow the news. Not at NPR. They're suckling on the taxpayer teat and buying golden Mercedes station wagons to drive home to their $4 million houses while we pay them to lie to us. That's kind of kinky, isn't it? That's beat me, whip me, make me write bad stories. The just amazing NPR stuff. So we have that going. But there is and I got to say, the Chris Van Hollen appearing on the television shows, the Sunday morning shows yesterday, where he said a lot of stuff. And he was asked a question or two, like, hey, did you ask him if he's a member of MS-13? And he's like, what, me? No, why would I ask that? I know the answer to that. He knows the answer to that. He knows by the tattoos on his knuckles that say MS-13. It's actually a marijuana leaf and then a smiley face, and then he had a 1 and a 3, but he had them tattooed over with a cross and a skull, because who doesn't have tattoos on their 4 knuckles of marijuana leaf and a smiley face, right? That's all perfectly natural, nothing to see here. And then a crucifix and a skull, because who doesn't have that? And these Democrats, they can't wait to lap it up like the bootlicks that they are. They're bootlicks for who? Well, for Satan. That's who, little after-school Satan club. So we got that. But starting with the biggest story of the day, of course, is Pope Francis has died on Easter Monday at the age of 88. The Vatican put out a statement, And Pope Francis he had an interesting life. He had an actual, first of all, he's the first pope ever from the Americas. That is to say, North America and South America, which is why in between we have the Gulf of America, because it's surrounded by America. Even though Mexico borders a part of the Gulf of America, it doesn't engulf America does. But he's the first pope ever from, we haven't been around for that long, compared to the Vatican and the papacy and all that stuff. But he is the first pope, and he's the first Jesuit priest to become a pope, which is kind of a big deal too. He had, as a young man, he had worked as a bouncer. He was a bouncer. The Pope had been a bouncer. Now, how did he go from bouncer to Pope? I don't know. Got to ask him, and we're going to have to wait to ask him now. So I'm sure it's been written about extensively, but he had been a bouncer, and he had worked as a janitor, too. Isn't that amazing? He had, as a young man, he got very sick. He got pneumonia, and he had cysts in his lungs, and he had a bit of his portion of one of his lungs surgically removed as a young man, 21 years old. And then he went on to become the Pope, right? That's pretty good, and lived to 88 years old. Pretty good doctors, I guess, in Buenos Aires. And remarkable stuff. So from Buenos Aires, from Argentina, place where my best girl and I have vacationed repeatedly in Argentina and Buenos Aires, in particular. But not like the Pope. The Jorge Mario Bergoglio. His parents were Italian immigrants, which might give you a leg up when it comes to becoming the Pope. Because, and I'd like this time, I'd like to see an Italian Pope. It's been a long time since there's been an Italian Pope. And call me biased, call me prejudiced, I think an Italian Pope would be nice. But Pope Francis, who's Jorge Mario Bergoglio, and a nice Italian name. And he was born in Buenos Aires and raised by his Italian immigrant parents. He's had an amazing life. And being a bouncer, going from bouncer to Pope, that's a story. That is, got to start with that. Now, he's the first Jesuit, so the first Pope from either North America or South America. There is, and Timothy Cardinal Dolan in New York, hey, he should be the next Pope. He's not the youngest guy in the world, but they don't necessarily pick you because you're the youngest guy in the world. It's not TV news or anything like that. It's the papacy at the Vatican. So I'm not sure that they focus on that so much. But no American has ever been chosen. This was the first South American, the first Pope ever to come from the Americas, from the Western, the Western Hemisphere, North America, South America, the Gulf of America, all that good stuff. So we've got that going on, a lot going on there. And when I heard, I had never known that he was a bouncer. He had been a bouncer as a young man, but I heard that this morning. I was like, oh, then that makes him very interesting. So the first from the Americas and the first Jesuit, generally considered to be very liberal denomination, and he certainly has been that. In fact, Joe Scarborough on MSDNC this morning saw that the Pope died, and he recognized it for what it was, a good opportunity to attack Republicans and slander them and malign them because these people are cancer. They're a cancer on civilization. Joe Scarborough is just a little tiny tumor. He's a little tumor. Amazing. But what do you hear what he said today when he learned that the Pope had died? Hey, wait a minute. This is a good opportunity. He used to pretend to be a Republican, but he's been a fraud all his life and everything he does. Pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, what do you hear what he said? Just amazing stuff. Who is Lori Klausutis? Who is Lori Klausutis? We'll ask Joe Scarborough about that coming up. And we are at 888-630-9625. A lot of other news as well, but obviously the giant story is the Pope Francis dying. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Well, it's true that Pope Francis has died, but the Democrat Party, well, they continue to rage on and burn whatever they're burning and attacking whatever they're attacking. From the media to the U.S. Senate to the House of Representatives, they're on the wrong side of everything. But before we get into all of that, let us go to the telephones because I know there's a lot to talk about today, and a lot has happened since we convened on Good Friday, and now it is Easter Monday. Let us go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Chris calling from Marshall, Virginia. Christopher, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Monsignor Planty, it's always an honor. And give a shout out to my homies out here on the front line of the heartland in Marshall. You know, all things being equal and credit where credit's due and all those things. I'm just wondering if there's a possibility we may have an opportunity to throw a Catholic in the ring maybe this time. Just consider possibly a Catholic Pope.
I think that would be a good idea. I gotta tell you. When do you hear Joe Scarborough attack? He wants a communist to become pope because
we just had a Marxist. Why not? You know, I mean.
Well, yes, it's true that Pope Francis had raised eyebrows here and there with a number of his statements, and they were significant. They were not insignificant. The eyebrow-raising moments that the Pope had, and he's been the subject of a good deal of discussion since he became Pope. But Chris, I think it would be fair to say that you would like to see a more conservative Pope take over.
That would let's just consider the possibility. I don't know, maybe, you know.
Just you're kind
maybe
of
one that doesn't advocate for abortion or transgenders or open borders or things like that. You know, just on a whim, on a lark.
Right. So not a Jesuit then, probably,
or a Unitarian Universalist. You know.
Right. Well, I tell you, there are a number of names that have already emerged. I don't know if you've been following along, but there is one that for me, has got to be considered a front runner because his name. Have you seen this? Because it's kind of fun. Pizza Bolla. Literally.
I could definitely advocate for that, especially if he's deep dish.
He is Pizza Bolla, like Chicago. He's not from Chicago, but Cardinal, literally, this is true. Cardinal Pizza Bolla, Pizza, like pizza, and Balla, Pizza Bolla. That's his name. He's got to be Italian because his name is Pizza Bolla. But he's a cardinal now, and I believe he's in Jerusalem at the moment, which is, serious duty, heavy lift. And Cardinal Pizza Bolla, come on. How great would that be? God, I want to see him I want to meet him and everything, but I think if his name is Pizza Bolla, we could sit down and we could talk. Now the passing of Pope Francis. God bless him. I know he was the Pope. God will take him in. Might have to have a good talking. Maybe St. Peter will want to pull him aside at the front gate for a while, the pearly gate. But setting that aside, where do you hear what the news media is doing with their gang stuff? Because today the Pope may have died, but the Democrats are still ferociously advocating for gang members to shower with your daughter at her junior high school. Because the Democrat Party, none of them will ever be Pope. Not one of these people. And what do you hear with Joe Scarborough and then Dana Bash, whose ex-husband was one of those felonious 51, and that corrupt letter that ran an information operation against us on the lead up to Election Day. The corruption of the left knows no bounds. Extraordinary stuff. But before I start getting to all of that, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Chris calling from the Garden State of New Jersey. Chris, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. What I was saying to your screener was the real point of all of these so-called deportation, due process, is for two reasons. One, to tell every illegal, don't self-deport because we're going to litigate it, right? And two, more importantly, is to suggest the notion that we have to litigate every single deportation because then they'll keep all the tens of millions in the country saying, "Oh, we have to wait to see how this all plays out," and look, that pretends that the so-called Obama, when he's the porter in chief, deported millions. There was no due process because there's no you deport someone. There's no law. You don't go to court for a deportation if they're here illegal. It's like trespassing. You remove someone. There's no deportation. If someone's on your lawn or in your house and you kick them out, the cops don't bring them to court. They just kick them out, and that's what this is, and that's the whole point.
Well, you're 100% right about the Democrats, Chris, and that they want to they want billions of dollars to go to corrupt lawyers that want to fundamentally transform the United States of America, as Barack Obama promised or threatened to do. You're right, Barack Obama.
One more thing. This is about the census, because they're always playing the long game. The Democrats, they're always playing the long game. This is about the census. They know if they lose this, they're done for.
To change the demographics of the United States and fundamentally transform the United States so that it is unrecognizable as the president, United States of America. And they want to do it because they're racists. They're hostile to white people. Even their white people are hostile to white people. Even their Jewish people are hostile to Jewish people. The Democrat Party is really a cancer. It's a disease. It's a virus. And we have to buy the antibiotics from communist China, which they know too. But, Chris, you're correct. This is about litigating and drawing out and prolonging. And I let your point is a great one, and that is don't self-deport. Whatever you do, don't self-deport because we're going to fight. And how long would this take? For the number they like to use is 11 million illegal aliens. It may be more like 15 million or even 20 million. And if you're litigating everything into the ground, then more illegals are going to feel good about continuing to flow illegally into the country because they know that the Democratic Party is illegally backing them in their illegality because the Democrat Party, who do you think is committing all the crime in the United States of America, for the love of? Yeah, so the deportation, the due process, and how long will it take and how many lawyers will it take to litigate let's just say 15 million illegal aliens in the United States. And again, Joe Biden, even the lefties are using the number 10 million or 11 million people that he let into the country during 4 years of illegal alien gang members flowing into the country, murdering and raping and drugging and human trafficking and all that. And the Democrats applaud that, and they want more of that. And I've got to say that now the Democrats want to draw it out. And oh, yeah, I was going to mention also that Ellis Island was open as a gateway to the United States, a legal gateway where people were vetted at Ellis Island, came in by ship, didn't just come in as a gang across the border walking, loaded with drugs and guns and covered with gang tattoos. Ellis Island, where people were vetted and they were checked for medical conditions. You may remember young Vito Andolini when he arrived. He had to be held in quarantine because it's a Godfather reference, and he had to be held because he had a virus from the ship or from Sicily. But never mind that, because 12 million people came in through Ellis Island legally over the course of more than 60 years. It was about 64 years that Ellis Island was the gateway to the United States. And during that 64-year period, 12 million legal immigrants came into the United States through Ellis Island. During Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's time as corrupt president and vice president, even they'll say 11 million came in illegally in 4 years, not 64 years, in 4 years. So subtract the 60 years, and there you've got it. And they weren't vetted. And the number of gang members and illegals that came in going to make the next 30 years in the United States, the Godfather and Tony Montana and Scarface going to be nothing compared to what the Democrats have just done to the country. Now start your stopwatch. Isn't that amazing stuff? And Chris, you're right. They're sending a message to illegals, keep coming. We're going to litigate. We're not going to allow deportations. We're going to fight against every deportation. And you're right also, Chris, their goal is to change the demographics of the United States of America into a permanent left-wing hellocracy that the Democrats want to inflict upon not just the U.S., but civilization itself, because they'll make it into a country that people don't want to flee their country to come to anymore. They'll turn it into a beephole, just like the beephole countries that the Democrats have, well, that the illegals have fled, the new Democrats have fled. Now, Michael, you've got, and since they love illegal aliens, boy, do they love illegal aliens. Now, I'll get to Joe Scarborough on the Pope. The Pope died, so Joe Scarborough attacked Republicans, which he used to pretend to be. Now he pretends to be a journalist. He's a crook. He's not an honest person. And his semi-inflatable flotation device of a third wife, not exactly the sharpest bulb, let me say, in the constellation. Amazing stuff. But let me go to, because Chris Van Hollen is one of the leading pro-criminal Democrats. He loves criminals because he's a leftist. He's not a liberal. He's a leftist. And as far as I'm concerned, the Maryland Democrat senator is basically a criminal. You tell by his deeds, his actions, the things that he supports. He supports more crime. He did not go to see the mother of Rachel Morin. Rachel Morin was raped and murdered by an illegal alien from El Salvador, just like the criminal that he went to visit in El Salvador, thinking that he's the hero of the story. And in Democrat Party circles, amazingly, he is the hero of the story because they love crime and criminal. Man, oh man, I am telling you, these guys, these Democrats. And here's another one today from Andy No. Andy No, you know Andy No from Twitter. NGO from Vietnam, family from Vietnam. 2 Maryland men, in quotation marks, have been arrested over the murder of a 23-year-old mother whose body was found April 17th, buried outside the Cedarville State Forest in Prince George's County, Maryland, the same county where Kilmore Abrego Garcia lived. And illegal migrant Casey Robinson, Alexi Barbera Rosa, that's his name. I just read that's only one person's name. Casey Robinson Alexi Barrera Rosa, 24 years old, was arrested out of state and will be transported back to Maryland to face charges. Rolvin Eduardo Barrera, he's got 2 Barreras, 37 years old, of unknown immigration status, was charged with being an accessory to the murder. Isn't that amazing? The latest murder of a woman in Maryland involving suspects who are illegal foreign nationals. And what is the Democrat senator from Maryland doing? He's trying to get more illegal alien criminal gang members into Maryland, out of prisons in El Salvador and into Maryland. Just amazing stuff. And if you're a Democrat, there might be something wrong with your brain. You need to listen to this show every day and get back to me. Just amazing stuff. But let's go to, because Chris Van Hollen, the Democrat radical extremist, pro-crime, pro-criminal, pro-gang member, Democrat senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, he went and shacked up with his pally Murdermore, and then he came back, and the media can't wait to give him an oil massage, including Dana Bash at CNN. Dana Bash at CNN, one of the Sunday shows that he went on. And Dana Bash asked him a question or two, but she didn't notice that he didn't answer the questions at all, not even close. In fact, some of them are so completely ridiculous. It's like she asks him, so you're having lunch and, rub down with Brego Garcia, and so you talked to him about his involvement with MS-13, right? And you know what he did? He said, yeah, Trump is really bad, isn't he? And she's like, yeah, well, we agree on that. So I'm not going to ask any follow-ups. On CNN yesterday with the pro-crime, pro-gang member, pro-murder, anti-Marylander, Democrat Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, who should be recalled this week by the voters in Maryland. He sat down with Democrat Party pal, ex-husband, now ex-husband. It was her husband then during the Obama years. Her husband was a fake and totally fake intelligence person in the Obama administration. Here's Dana Bash pretending to be a journalist and Chris Van Hollen pretending to be a senator.
President Trump says that some of Abrego Garcia's tattoos signify that he's a member of MS-13. In 2019, police alleged a confidential informant claimed that Abrego Garcia was an active MS-13 member. His wife and his attorney deny that, of course. Can you say with absolute certainty that he is not, nor has he ever been a member of the MS-13 gang? And did you ask him point blank?
Well, Dana, what Donald Trump is trying to do here is change the subject.
I'm sorry, what? Says Chris Van Hollen as he changes the subject. What Donald Trump is trying to do is change. No, that is the subject. His involvement with MS-13 is precisely the subject. But Dana Bash is too dishonest or too stupid. And I don't think she's too stupid. I used to work with her a long time ago. When I was at CNN, she was at CNN. And so that means that she's that dishonest and that corrupt, because that's what journalism is today. So wait a minute. I mean, it's almost hilarious. Just the last part of the question where she says, can you say with certainty whether he is or has ever been, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party or MS-13? And then he says, well, with no sense of irony whatsoever, this is classic, no sense of irony, and they use the words, but they don't know what they mean, rolled into one. And Dana Bash doesn't have the gonads to say, doesn't have the backbone, the courage, the decency, the journalistic chops to say, well, wait a minute. You didn't answer the question at all. I asked you whether he's a member of MS-13, and you attacked Donald Trump. And I'm not going to let you get away with it. But, of course, she did let him get away with it because it went like this.
Can you say with absolute certainty that he is not, nor has he ever been a member of the MS-13 gang? And did you ask him point blank?
Those are the questions.
Well, Dana, what Donald Trump is trying to do here is change the subject.
What? You must be kidding me. Now, if I were in her dress, in her pumps, which I would not likely be, I'd have to laugh in his face and say, well, I know you're filled with hatred and, you know, you're for firebombing the governor's mansions if Jews live there that are too pro-Israel, and I know you're pro-gang member, but I actually had a question in there, and he didn't answer it. What Donald Trump is trying to do is change the subject as the corrupt, filthy, rotten, pro-crime, pro-murder, anti-taxpayer, anti-citizen Democrat senator from Maryland changes the subject. Aren't they amazing? Just amazing. It didn't get any better from there.
Since you were the one person to have met with him, and since this is a thing, you say on social media, it's what we hear from Donald Trump and Republicans every day, all day long, you didn't ask him?
I didn't ask him that because I know what his answer is. What he told me was he was sad and traumatized that he was being in prison because he has committed no crimes.
Didn't ask him about his MS-13 membership because I already know the answer. Did you read it in the Washington Post? Did you see it in a tweet? Because you're supposed to be representing the people of the United States, the people of Maryland at least. If I lived in Maryland, I don't have any senators or representatives. I live in D.C. It's taxation without representation. But I'd start a recall for this miscreant. I got to tell you, this guy, yeah, Donald Trump just wants to change the subject. Then there are the tattoos on his knuckles. Hey, Dana Bash, did you even, spend 5 minutes preparing for this interview? Did you show the pictures of the tattoos on his knuckles with the marijuana leaf, the smiley face, MS, what is now a crucifix, but was a 1, what is now a skull, but was a 3? Have you expressed any interest at all in getting to the truth, or just covering up for the Democrat Party?
You didn't ask him?
I didn't ask him that because I know what his answer is.
Also, a hilarious moment in London over the weekend. The transgender Brits, which seems redundant, doesn't it? They had a big rally for transgender rights and for Hamas. They're pro-Hamas and pro-transgender. They don't follow the news, apparently, but they're out there in the street defacing symbols of feminism and praising Hamas, genocidal, Jew-hating Nazis of the 21st century. But never mind that. All right, and we'll get to that, too. The Democrats, Chris Van Hollen, they love gang members, and they don't like America. These are two key elements of today's Democrat Party. Let's go to, let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Francisco calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. Francisco, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for taking my call, and thank you for your show. My wife and I really enjoy it, and we love your sense of humor. But just wanted to say really quickly, because I know there are going to be a lot of calls or maybe about Pope Francis. Two things to clarify a little bit. He was actually very pro-life. He spoke out a lot against abortion. People can look up the things he said against it. And he also spoke out about the evil of transgenderism, and he called it evil. And I know, like, people on the ultra-right and the ultra-left say all sorts of things. It's interesting because on the ultra-left, they love him for the same reasons that they hate him on the ultra-right, and a lot of the stuff is false. I do know that he kind of had a little bit of, like, Marxist leanings in some of the things that he said, but he was pro-life, and he was very much outspoken about the integrity of the family, about the fact that transgenderism destroys society. He did say these things.
He did say these things, and he was a Jesuit, and Jesuits lean liberal, right? But he became the Pope and the leader of the Catholic Church, and there's doctrine and there's dogma and doctrine, and it's true, he would raise questions as Pope in many instances, and not without controversy.